I'm Rennie Cushing, and I'm the chair of the State House Bicentennial Commission. I want to welcome you to an event that's been over a couple hundred years in the making, and welcome you to congregate here on what was once characterized as a frog pond at the south end of Concord. And it's good to gather before a building that is so steeped in history and that really comes to represent our democracy here in the state. And to begin today's program, I want to call upon the mayor of Concord, Boulay, to give a welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's try it again. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the birthday party. Are we excited? The speaker dressed up for us. It's a great day. Welcome to your capital city, and good afternoon. We appreciate you all being here today to celebrate our State House 200th birthday on the day its doors opened in 1819. We all thank Concord as our longtime capital, but this hasn't always been the case. Concord fought hard to earn this title, and it remained that way. Prior to 1807, the legislature moved around from other towns like Exeter, Portsmouth, Hopkinton, and Hanover, among others. But Concord became its permanent home in 1807. The legislature voted to build the Capitol building in 1814, but some discussion followed about the location, and Concord won the argument with a $4,000 cash bid. Some things don't change, right? It was constructed with granite from Rattlesnake Hill, which is over here, and chiseled by state prison inmates. Concord's capital city status was challenged over the years several times. In 1863, the city agreed to pay to enlarge the State House, but didn't want it too close to the stables, sheds, and the workshops. It was decided that a street running parallel to Park Street on the other side would make a nice boundary. An act was actually passed stating that Concord would remain the capital, but only if the street was built. One homeowner was against this and refused to sell. Surprise, right? The mayor at the time, not me, at the advice of the municipal lawyer, had the house moved on a Sunday while no court was in session to stop it. So over here we have Capitol Street, and it was indeed built, and was opened to the public on June 1st, 1865. In 1909, Manchester, once again challenged Concord's capital status by reportedly offering $500,000 to build a new building after the current one became too small. Concord countered by this offer to pay for the renovations to double the space instead, and was victorious. This brings us to today, as we celebrate our capital city and the State House, the oldest in the nation, with the legislature still occupying its original chambers. The building remains much like it was at the renovations of 1909. And it is not only a Concord landmark, but a New Hampshire one as well. I hope you enjoy the week of celebration. Thank you, and happy birthday.
And now I want to call upon the longtime clerk of the House, former clerk of the House, and the vice chair of the Bicentennial Commission, Karen Wadsworth, to read a proclamation from the governor.
I'm glad I remembered my glasses, because I didn't know I was going to be doing this. The state of New Hampshire, by His Excellency Christopher T. Sununu, Governor, a proclamation in the year of our Lord 2019. New Hampshire State House Bicentennial Week, June 2nd through 8th, 2019. Whereas the current New Hampshire State House was built from 1816 to 1819 in Concord, New Hampshire, after years of debate by state officials on where to reestablish the state capital from its colonial home of Exeter. And whereas in 1809, Concord was decided as the permanent home of state government, and in 1814, the legislature decided on the current location on Main Street for the capital to be built. And whereas Concord was selected in part due to the abundance of granite that would go into building the People's House. The granite symbolized not only the strength and beauty often associated with New Hampshire, but also the importance of the stones used nationally in constructing government and business centers across New England and the United States. And whereas the State House was originally home to the New Hampshire House of Representatives, New Hampshire Senate, the Governor's Office and Executive Council, as well as the Secretary of State, State Treasurer, and the state's departments and agencies, marking Concord as the hub of government in New Hampshire. And whereas the People's House is the oldest state capitol in which both houses of the legislature meet in their original chambers. And whereas the state of New Hampshire is one of only 5 states nationwide to reach this historic bicentennial milestone, and it is fitting to pay tribute and celebrate the rich history of our State House and the impact it has had on the Granite State and how we govern. Now therefore I, Christopher T. Sununu, Governor of the State of New Hampshire, do hereby proclaim June 2nd through 8th, 2019 as the New Hampshire State House Bicentennial Week in the state of New Hampshire, call this to the attention of all citizens and encourage Granite Staters to join us in Concord to commemorate this historic milestone for our great state. In testimony whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the state of New Hampshire to be affixed this 30th day of May, 2019. Christopher T. Sununu, Governor.
Next, we'll have someone who really knows how to dress for the occasion. We're going to hear from the Speaker of the House, and we note that one of the things that we realized over the past couple centuries is that our state has perfected its democracy. And I was noting that 200 years ago, Steve Shirtliff could not have been Speaker of the state of New Hampshire because he couldn't be in the legislature because he was not of the Protestant faith. So as we've expanded our democracy, it's good to have people like my leader, my speaker, speak.
This is not the new State House of Representatives dress code. In less than an hour, we'll be transported back to 1819 to get to play Matthew Harvey, the then Speaker. Many of you know, in 2015, we regilded the State House, and my good friend, and who was then Speaker, Sean Jasper, twice invited me to climb the staging and to touch the eagle on top of this building. And from that lofty perch, as I looked around my hometown of Concord, it brought back such wonderful memories. As I looked to the east, I saw Main Street, where as a kid I helped my brother deliver the Concord Monitor, and as a rookie police officer I walked at B. And as I turned to the west, I saw City Hall, where I had the honor to serve for 11 years as a Concord City Councilor. And looking south, I saw the Warren Rudman Federal Courthouse, where I retired as a U.S. Marshal. And looking north, I could see the State Library where my mom worked, and where I got to know the beloved Commissioner of Cultural Resources, Van McLeod, a man who worked tirelessly to make sure that our dream to permanently memorialize John Winer came true. And at that time, I realized that this State House really was the geographical and symbolic center of my life. It is nice to know that as I'm now my 70 and plus, that as long as the Merrimack keeps flowing to Newburyport and into the ocean, that the New Hampshire State House will be here to serve the needs of the people of New Hampshire. So God bless New Hampshire, and thank you all.
We're pleased that our democracy has expanded so that we now have a woman president of the Senate, who unfortunately is not able to be here, but we have, on her behalf, representing the Senate, the Dean of the Senate, Lou D'Alessandro.
Thank you very much, Renee, and thank all of you for coming and celebrating this great American Day. Great to be here. Brother Connor, this place probably wouldn't be standing if you didn't work for admin services for all those years. So thank you for your service. Truly great work. As Representative Cushing pointed out I couldn't be here unless they amended the Constitution because Catholics could not hold public office. Amazing, isn't it? We had to amend the Constitution to give everybody the right to hold public office. We had to again amend the Constitution to give women the right to vote. So we've done it twice, and hopefully the voting will continue to expand as we proceed. On June 7th, 1819, we had a newly elected governor, Samuel Bell. Samuel was an Adams Clay Republican. Later he became an Adams anti-Jackson member of the party. But he had a message. I think the message is as important today as it was then. He talked about happiness for the people. And he said, "We are responsible for the public welfare and should watch over the public interests, afford security to the enjoyment of civil rights and religious rights, and faithfully seek and promote such measures as will conduce to the happiness of the people." 200 years ago, we decided to make people happy. We're continuing that as we speak. So we want all of you to be happy, all of you to be healthy, and indeed enjoy a great, great American Day. Thank you.
One of the nice things about the State House is that one time it housed every component of state government. As we've grown over the years, some of the individual branches of government have strayed from underneath the dome, but we're glad as part of this State House Bicentennial celebration to have the judicial branch come back to the State House to its former home. And on Tuesday, in fact, we'll have a pretty historic moment when the Supreme Court will hold an oral argument in Reps Hall. And we'd like to, welcome the Chief Justice now to come and thank us.
I'm delighted to be here to join in celebrating the 200th anniversary of this historic building. A testament to our commitment to democratic principles, to the rule of law, and to government that is close to the people. This is a wonderful building. It's been through many renovations and reconfigurations over the years, as Terry Path, who's here, I know, and is the historian of all things State House, can explain. The Senate chambers was actually the situs of where the Supreme Court sat for many years in the late 1800s. In recognition of that, we held oral argument in the Senate in January of this year, and as was mentioned on Tuesday, we will hear oral argument in the House chamber, and we hope that you can all attend. Our founders created a government of three branches: legislative, executive, and judiciary, with a healthy skepticism of the inevitable consequences of human nature, that those who are given some power will strive to attain more of it. To keep such striving in check, they envisioned, as Madison said, that the disparate functions of the branches would pit ambition against ambition, with the hope that in this way, liberty would be preserved. The legislature would control one great source of power, the purse or the money. The executive would control a second great source of power, the sword, the army or the police. And the judiciary would control a third source of power, the application of governmental authority when brought to bear against the individual in a particular circumstance. This system has not been flawless over the years, but on balance it has worked pretty darn well for more than 2 centuries. Its functioning depends in great measure on those who hold power being people of goodwill, who understand the limits of their authority and who are willing to work cooperatively with the other branches in furtherance of the public interest. With few exceptions, we have been most fortunate throughout the history of this state to have been blessed to have such people serve as our agents in all three branches of government. Let us pray that this tradition will continue in the years ahead. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And now I want to call upon our Secretary of State, Bill Gardner.
Thank you. This House of Freedom is chock full of history. There's only a handful of buildings in this large country of ours, outside of Washington, whose walls have seen the faces of as many presidents as this one has. On an occasion similar to this, just a little over 100 years ago, Governor Samuel Felker was speaking to a group just like you and here looking at the building. And I think this is really interesting, so I want to read to you some of the things he said. We have here the ancient and the familiar house of our ancestors, enlarged, beautified, and substantial. This house is in itself the embodiment of the hope and aspirations of a free people. It is probably idle and useless to speculate on the kind of government our successors in 100 years from now, he's talking about now, will enjoy. And yet what speed and with what certainty will those 100 years come to their termination? This day will draw to a close, and a number of days make one revolution of seasons. Year follows year, and a century is here. Practically every living thing that now moves on the face of the earth will disappear from it. Will this State House be here? Will our principle of government survive? In this building, must the different ideas be threshed out. It's a proud symbol, oh, this is not him anymore, but it's a proud symbol of the freedoms provided all of us from the Constitution. They and we voted for themselves and for ourselves. Thank you for coming.
I do want to acknowledge that there are members of the State House Bicentennial Commission who are spread throughout the crowd that would raise their hands and say thank you for all the work that we've been doing. Well, people may not have noticed it, but there's something different about the State House this morning to commemorate the Bicentennial, and I want to call upon Representative Welch to explain what that is.
When we first started on this bicentennial odyssey, it seemed to me that the fitting way to celebrate it would be to have the appropriate flag fly over the State House. So some of you can't see it, but there's a 20-star flag up on top. It's at half-mast. It makes it even more difficult. We also have a 20-star flag in Rupp's Hall. Now, in 1819, at this time of year, we actually had 21 states. But the federal law governing what the flag looks like determined that when a state joins the Union, that the flag will change the following July 4th. I worried about that, but I checked it 2 or 3 different times. We have the right flag. And Speaker Shurtleff, he arranged to have the flag flying at Rupp's Hall. I congratulate him for that. But we had to improvise it this morning. And we owe a debt of thanks to whoever invented the paperclip.
So, this is a birthday party. And what you we're gonna invite the constitutional officers over to the cake here to cut the cake for everyone, and we'll be singing happy birthday once they get there and assemble. Ready?
It's kind of like a pin. Just pass out the knives after.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.